Hello, and welcome to the Fancy Scientist podcast. Today's episode is a little bit different. Normally, when I have an interview, I'm the one who's doing the interviewing. But in this episode, we are flipping it around, and I'm actually being interviewed. Last year, I was interviewed by Andrew Lewin, who hosts the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I had such a great time chatting with him, and I have grown my audience recently, so I thought this episode would be really great to showcase my career path, which has not been linear. In fact, what I'm doing today is never what I expected to do. I'm not going to give too much away, but I started out as a researcher and did this career for 17 years. And today I am a small business owner. I do career mentoring. I help people who want to go into wildlife conservation, environmental careers. I create programs for them. I have programs for parents getting their kids outside, connected to nature, learning about science. And I just create content in general that revolves around my passions, which is conservation, nature, and science. Today, you're going to learn about how my career evolved, how I started out as a researcher, and then how in the world did I end up as a small business owner. Andrew and I are both passionate about science communication. We also touch upon that subject, especially how I got on TV. Yes, I have been on many different shows over the past few years. How did I land those roles? What it's like to be on TV? And so if you're on YouTube, let me know in the comments below if this is something you want to learn more about. If you're on the Spotify podcast, you can send me comments. I want to do a full episode about this. I definitely talk about career advice that I give students in this podcast, but I also talk about the realities of owning my own company. I am never one to shy away from what things are really like. So if you've ever wanted to start your own small business or side hustle, this is definitely a great episode for you to listen to. And anyone can do this. With the internet being what it is, easier than ever, and it is so rewarding. We talk a lot about balancing all the different things as a scientist and now as an entrepreneur. And these careers are actually very similar in terms of managing your time and being able to manage yourself. I talk about how I work to make it all happen because it's a lot. So this is a really great episode to get a behind the scenes look at what it's like to be both a researcher in the wildlife field and a small business owner. So let's just get into it. Enjoy this conversation on wide-ranging topics from science education and communication, working in research, working with students, to what do I think about Bigfoot? That's something I talk about a lot on these television shows. Enjoy.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin, and this is the podcast where you find out what's happening with the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, and what you can do to live for a better ocean by taking action. And on today's episode, we've got a great one for you folks. We've got Stephanie Manka, who is a fellow podcaster from the Fancy Scientist podcast. And she is just bringing the heat with career advice, how she built her career, how she went from academia over to her own company, and how she is helping people get careers in wildlife conservation. That's including ocean conservation. So it's a lot of what you can do to better your resume, what you can do to build up your mindset and get right in the right mode to build your wildlife conservation career, and even what to do within wildlife conservation. She goes into all of that in this episode. She does a couple different shows around with the History Channel, really reacting to videos that may have a questionable kind of thing about the science and conservation and wildlife. So it's a lot of fun-filled, packed information here with Stephanie Manka from the Fancy Scientist podcast. And you can go to her website. I'll put the website in the show notes as well as her podcast so you can check it out. But here's the interview with Stephanie. Enjoy, and I will talk to you after. Hey, Stephanie, welcome to the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Are you ready to talk about science communication?
Yes, I am 100% so excited for this.
Wonderful. This has been a long time coming, apparently, because I think we realized that neither of us have been on each other's podcast. And we're like, why hasn't that been? We've had the podcast for quite a long time, each of us. Probably some of the longest running podcasts, I think, in biology, I would say. But this is going to be fun. We're going to be talking about your career and how you ended up where you ended up as a science communicator, having your own podcast, but also having your own business, a full-time business, which is interesting in itself because not a lot of people could do that. And so I'm going to start to prod about how you can do that so I can learn how to do that as well. But also I think for a lot of people who are in the business of wildlife biology or ocean biology or marine biology or what have you, some people need to do that on their own. And because it's hard to fit in to some of the places and move and everything like that, depending on what we have going on in our life. So I'm looking forward to getting into all that. But Stephanie, if you could just introduce yourself to the audience if they don't know you and just let us know who you are and what you do.
Sure. I am Stephanie Manka. I used to be Shuttler. So if you hear about Stephanie Shuttler, that's me too. That was my married name. And I am a wildlife biologist, science communicator, career mentor. Like you said, I have my own business now, but I started out in this career as a traditional wildlife biologist going down the research route.
Unreal. And that is quite a tale, I assume, like going
Yes,
from research to where you are now and having your own business and going to science communication. I guess the first question to start off really is, did you ever expect to have this sort of path, like this career path when you first started?
No, not at all. So my father is actually a business owner, and as a child, I would watch him come home from work, and he always carried the business with him. Now, he was an excellent father. We spent lots of time together and everything, but there were definitely days where he was late to dinner because he had to stay with a diamond customer. He's a jeweler.
Okay.
And even on the weekends, he'd be talking about business, and he just always carried this on him. So I remember thinking, like, I don't want a job like that. I want to separate work. So you can already see where this is going. I want to separate work, life. But I'll tell you guys everything. I basically didn't know what I wanted to do for college. I was still confused. And my brother went to NYU for acting school. And I don't know, I just thought that was cool. I was like, oh, I'll be an actor. That sounds like a fun job. But I was also really scared of it. It's really risky. You hear about people never making it. People have to wait tables and they do their plays at night and everything. So I also, at the same time, decided to major in biology, and that would be my backup career. I could be a medical doctor. Right. And I did always like biology, especially the ecology stuff, but I never really knew there's a career that you could have with ecology or wildlife. I knew about Jane Goodall, but I was like, I'm not going to move to Tanzania in the middle of the forest and just live amongst chimpanzees. I didn't know, even if I wanted to, I didn't know like how you would do that. Yeah. So I studied biology as a backup career to be a doctor because that seemed like a safe career. I could make lots of money. There's always doctors. And so that was my plan, but I still wanted to be an actress. And then also I realized my brother had a big influence on me. He also recommended I study abroad, just like nonchalantly. Oh yeah, that'd be a cool experience for you. And I didn't go away to college, so I felt like I was missing out on getting an experience. I lived with my parents and I commuted. Right. So I thought that sounded really great. I was like, okay, I'll do that. And I went to the study abroad office. And at that time, there were brochures because we had the internet, but it wasn't like how it is today. And I looked at all these different brochures. I gathered the ones for theater, and those were all in Europe. And then I found two that were related to nature. One was in Africa, and one I think was I think it was Turks and Caicos, but I don't remember. Okay. But it was ocean related.
Yep.
And I remember spreading all the brochures on my bed and looking at them. And the theater ones, I don't know, it just didn't seem as interesting, like learning about like ancient Greek plays and stuff. As much. And I was a traveler growing up, even though my family didn't travel. Right. I got this student exchange, or it wasn't exchange, but a student ambassador program to Australia. And I did that. So I went to Australia and I was like by myself, technically. I went as a part of a group, but I didn't go with my family. So I did that, and The one for Kenya was especially calling my name because I just felt like, when am I ever going to have a chance to go to Africa again? That seems really scary. Nobody in my family wanted to go to Africa. I don't know. I couldn't imagine myself going there. So I was like, I'm just going to do that. And it was a study for wildlife management program.
No.
So it took me going all the way to Africa to realize, I can have a job in wildlife biology. I didn't realize that. So I just did the summer program. It was short, a month, but it introduced me into this world. And then when I came back, I went to a local state school. So it wasn't the best for wildlife, but I connected with the science professors and ecology professors there. And I knew you had to go to graduate school. And I now had the route of, okay, how do I become a wildlife biologist? So then I was on my way and I did a couple of internships. And then I went to graduate school. I got my Ph.D. I did some postdoc work. I had 2 postdocs. One was really short after I did my Ph.D. at the same university that I graduated. And then, to be honest, I really didn't want to move again. I had moved a bunch and I got married. I'm a big animal lover, so I accidentally rescued 6 animals.
These were like domesticated animals.
Yeah, 2 dogs and 4 cats. The last one really was an accident. Like, I really didn't want her, but she was semi-feral and there was no shelter room, so they would have put her down. So my undergrads that were working for me, they convinced me to keep her.
It's tough not to keep too, especially once you become an animal lover and you have multiple pets. Then it's, I can take this one in.
I know.
I can figure it out. It's really,
and especially when you have a house, you have no restrictions.
Oh yeah, 100%. I have to stay away from some of those Facebook accounts, shelters, because I'm like, I'll take all of them. Yes, you need help? Yeah, I'll take you. And I can't do that. I can't hold every one of these pets.
My boyfriend now didn't grow up with any pets, and he has 1 dog. We live separately. He has 1 dog. I have 2 dogs and 2 cats. And I'm slowly trying to convince him that this is normal to have like multiple, he's so against it. But I show him those Facebook posts. I'm like, see, this is how you get them. You feel bad.
Exactly it. And once you have a wildlife degree, then it makes it easy. Like, I know how to handle this. So let me ask you this. So with the PhD, with the post, was it more of a focus like working directly with animals, or was it more of a conservation focused, almost like policy driven, like policy focused, or protected area planning or things like what was it?
So I did my PhD on forest elephants in animal behavior and using non-invasive genetics. So my focus was always like research focused, but I wanted a conservation application.
Right.
But to be honest, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. And that was what I call my big mistake, is that I didn't have a clear end goal. I was like, I want to work in conservation, maybe for the government or nonprofit. So I had these animals, I had a house, and I didn't want to move. I wanted to move once and for all, and that was it. So I was applying to permanent jobs, and I was really confident in my job applications and stuff, but I wasn't getting any interviews except for I got 1 interview for a permanent job, and then I didn't want to apply for postdocs because those are temporary positions. But I did let myself, when it was like really perfect, when there's a postdoc I really liked, and/or it wasn't an area I wanted to live forever, I could see myself living.
Gotcha. So the temporary the temporariness of the job helped if you want to live somewhere, and then I'm not going to live there forever, I'll come back or grab.
No, that I could. Yeah, so I wanted a job where it was in like a big enough city that I could find another job. So I take it to postdoc, but then find a permanent job afterward. But I didn't want to go to South Dakota where the chances for a job that I was interested in would come up. I knew academic jobs were really competitive, like being a professor, but I had no idea how competitive wildlife jobs were. So this was totally shocking to me that I was not getting jobs. Right. And I know that sounds funny, but it was. I was like, I have the experience. I have a PhD. Like, how am I not qualified? But I just slowly realized that just the market is so saturated out there. Mm-hmm. So I did get a postdoc. I got a long postdoc in Raleigh, North Carolina. It was 5 years. And I was like, so Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill are considered the research triangle. So I was like, okay, over 5 years, I will find a permanent job in the research triangle.
Yep.
Guess what? In 5 years, I didn't.
Oh, no.
And it was kind of a couple of things that mostly I was surprised by how few jobs I was qualified for, because what I learned from my first experience is that I got interviews for jobs where my experience really lined up with the job. So I thought getting your PhD would be a blanket where I could easily work for the Nature Conservancy, but I had worked in Gabon on forest elephants. So if I was applying for a job in North Carolina working on mammals, like there's not a lot of crossover. So I didn't realize how competitive we're. So I think maybe a decade or so ago, I would have been fine. But now they're going to hire the person who's been working in North Carolina with that mammal experience over somebody with my experience. Just every interview that I had, I would get so close, but they would be like, oh, there's just somebody with this much more experience. In one case, it was somebody with 10 years of experience. So it's like, oh my gosh. And people were even asking, like, why is this person applying for this job? They're clearly overqualified. But again, the market's just so oversaturated. So I loved my job in Raleigh. I worked at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. I loved that. And at the same time, they really encouraged science communication. And I really loved science communication. So I started blogging with a friend, and then I eventually developed my own blog. And then a couple of things happened at the same time. I realized that I loved science communication. I loved writing. I loved public speaking. And I was also blogging about the troubles on the job market, and I knew I wasn't the only one. So I started to give advice about this. And just slowly, honestly, I transitioned into doing more blogging and stuff. And then I was listening to podcasts I eventually found podcasts where people were making money off of doing this. And so I was like, okay, like eventually I stopped applying for jobs, and I decided to do this full time.
Yeah.
So I do a combination of science communication and career mentoring and some other stuff like writing books and being on TV and all of this stuff.
It seems like a lot to take on, like a lot of different streams. I guess that's what you have your own business. You're able to do that. Now, do you miss the research aspect or finding that job? Do you ever go back and look and just be like, oh man, I wish I went into this route instead of another route? Or did you feel like you exhausted everything before you went in?
That's a good question. Yeah, yes and no. I would say so. Mostly I don't miss it, because another thing that was going on was I felt like my research was very academic, and I loved it, but I really wanted a conservation application. I loved animals growing up. I wanted to save the world. And when I was doing my research, I thought it was cool, but it was just going into academic journals. And yeah, maybe somebody could use it for a conservation application, but it was just like maybe if somebody does this. Whereas if I was working on a project that had a direct conservation application, I think I would have enjoyed it more. And also I could have applied for jobs all over the country and stuff. But like I said, I really wanted to stay in Raleigh. I was really happy in Raleigh. I do miss, like, when I talk about science communication, I do miss like the firsthand experience being like, we discovered this or our group found this out. I miss that part, but I don't miss necessarily writing the papers. And I miss like being part of a larger lab where we could like share ideas and talk about what's new in science and stuff like that. But in terms of the research itself, I don't miss a ton. And I do miss like getting those neat experiences as well. So those are the things that I miss. Yeah. But at the same time, also, I was working with kids. My job required to integrate research into classrooms, like real research. So we would have kids set up camera traps, and we would use the images for research. And I was doing a lot of social science research too. And I realized that for people to care about the environment and conservation, it's really important for them to have a connection with nature. So that was also like where things started to pivot for me, that, science communication is really important because I can create that connection for kids. Think about Steve Irwin. He created that connection for so many people. And so I realized like, even though I never really watched Steve Irwin, but I realized, I can have a bigger impact by getting people to care, and then they carry that throughout their lifetime. Whereas when I was working on forest elephants, yes, I was working on an endangered species, but the problem was not like we weren't studying them enough. The problem was people were poaching them. So like, how do you get the people to stop poaching them? Which ultimately boils down to people caring enough about wildlife, whether it's the politicians, the government, the people buying it, or the gap in knowledge between what people are buying versus what they think they're buying, all of that sort of stuff. It's a person problem at that point.
Yeah, for sure. So like when you first started your business, like that's not an easy thing to start. Did you have, you started talking about the career thing, that was that your first sort of venture into building the business was, okay, I'm going to offer career advice to people. Was that the first thing?
Yeah, I think so. So I officially opened an LLC in, I believe it was April of 2020. So this happened right around the pandemic too. So I decided before the pandemic, and it was great timing because everything shut down. So I opened it. So I knew there's several ways to make money through blogging. One is ads.
Yeah.
So at that time, I watched Tiger King like everybody else, and I wrote blog posts about it, and those did really well.
Yeah.
And I was able to sign up with an advertising company that pays better than like Google ads. So I started getting ad revenue. It's still not a ton of money, but I do have ads.
Enough to get money in, at least.
And I was in a lucky situation where I didn't have to worry about money. My ex did have a lucrative job, so I didn't have to make money in the first place. But I did make money with ads. And then, yes, I opened up group programs to add some more income. And then the other way for people to make money is affiliate links too. So I did experiment with some of that, but I never made a ton of money off of that. I also never really worked at that. It was really, and I was writing my book too. So I do get income from my book, but it's mostly my book and the group programs that do the most. Those are the two most lucrative. And once I started taking students, and then especially when I started seeing the success of my students, that's really what helped out, because at first it was, here's based on my experience.
Yeah.
If I wanted this, like, here's what would have done differently. Yeah. But I wasn't 100% sure it would work. I'm like, okay, it should work. But then once I started working with my students and stuff, because my problem wasn't my job applications. I wrote really good job applications. It was, I didn't have the experience. So really applying that on my students and then seeing it work for them, it's, wow, this really works. And this is awesome. And then it grew from there. But then I did get a divorce, so I did have to provide income for myself. And that is the trickiest part, probably.
Yeah, for sure. I did the same thing. I started to make money off of the podcasting, and I ventured into careers as well. And I had a job at the time. I have a wife. The dual income was nice, and so I didn't have to worry about too much money. But when I didn't have a job, and then all of a sudden this money is going towards paying bills, it's a lot of pressure on yourself, I found, for me anyway, to put on yourself once you're like, okay, now I've got to make a go of this. Before, if I got a student or I didn't get a student, then it was like, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. But now I need every student that I can. Did you find that was a lot of pressure when you had to pivot in life like that?
Yeah, that can definitely happen to you. And there's two schools of thought. And I listen to not a lot of career mentors, but I have a couple of chosen that I listen to. I listen to a lot of their advice. And yeah, different people use different approaches. There's Tony Robbins will say, burn your bridges or burn your boats. It's based off of that anecdote where it's like a war. I can't remember the story, but basically it's a war general. They went to an island and they burned the boats because they were planning to win or something. There's no way back.
Yeah.
So you quit your job, or you make things happen for you. Or the other one is you keep your day job. And the nice thing about that is that you don't have that financial pressure. Then it becomes more of a joy, and you don't have to worry about selling it. So yeah, those are the two main schools of thought. But yeah, sometimes you can get caught up in that, but it's really important, I think, to separate yourself from that as well, and decide what works best for you too. For some people, one method works better than the other to jump all in, whereas the other, for them to, and there's part-time work too that people can get. And I tell my students, and that's the one great thing about being connected to the entrepreneur community, is that it attracts a certain type of people. And I would say that they're either taught or just are more likely to do this, but to make sacrifices, willing to do what it takes. I was part of this a group coaching program. It was an expensive program, and somebody sold their car to be a part of it.
Wow.
And yeah, because they really wanted this business for themselves. And so they were just like willing to do what it took. And actually, the mentor, she was incredible too. She came from Venezuela. She was a single mom. She was going through a divorce. She had like
Yeah.
tons of legal bills and stuff. So that's what I tell my students too. Like, I do charge for my programs, it's an investment for them and themselves, so that I can give them unbiased advice. And this is like my career now, is to serve them. But I think a lot of times we have our stigma in our head. Oh, if we do Uber or something, like that means like we haven't made it. And especially if you're a college graduate, you see your friends move on, like doing quote unquote real jobs, and you're even if you are working wildlife jobs. For me, my temp jobs never lined up. So I would go home, I would work for 6 months, then go home for 6 months and wait for the next job. And I would live with my parents and like work at Starbucks and stuff. And my other friends would have jobs. But it's just, we just live in a different world. It's just a different system. And that's totally normal for us.
It's challenging. It definitely is challenging. The people I see in ocean conservation, they are moving from place to place. And they're happy with that. And that's their lifestyle that they chose. But they move from place to place. And it'll be from not only cities, but it'll be in like towns that are far from cities, like country areas that there's not a lot around, and then they'll move to another place because that job was only for 4 to 6 months, and then they'll go to another place, and they'll go to another place. And it's a hard life to lead where you can't put roots down, you can't buy a home, you're going from apartment to apartment, or you're renting a home or Airbnb or whatever that might be. And it's a very challenging place to be in life, unless that's what you choose to do. But if you wanted to start a family, or if you wanted to have any kind of roots, it's very difficult to continue to move like that. So it's very challenging. And there are jobs that are full-time, permanent, like a lot of government jobs and things like that. But a lot of the ones that people go for that are available are these 6 month jobs, and they're usually based on funding. And is that the biggest challenge you find for some of your students? I just want to talk a little bit about that, if that's okay, like with the career stuff. What are the biggest challenges that you find that students have?
That they can't get jobs. That's the biggest one. So I do think, and oceans might be different. In my field, I do think it's normal for people to take several jobs before they land their permanent job. I was actually, for my latest training, I read this paper about it's called It Pays to Get Paid in Wildlife Work. And it was all about how the more paid jobs you have, the more likely you're going to end up with a permanent job. And it was like 7 to 9 jobs predicts success. I think that's a lot though, and my students have not had 7 to 9 jobs. Like they've gotten permanent jobs with maybe 3 to 5 or something around that range.
That makes sense.
I think that's pretty normal. And even like my one friend in graduate school, she got her master's and she couldn't get a job afterwards. She worked at Starbucks for a while. So I think like the biggest message I want to tell people out there who are struggling is it's competitive. It is so saturated. It's not about you. And then talking to employers too, employers are like, it's so hard to choose people because sometimes it's this person would be great, but so would this person. So if you're not getting the job, like you do, I don't want to say you have to try harder, but you have to think about it more strategically.
Yeah.
So it's about building up so I say it takes clarity, strategy, and application. So it's about first figuring out what you want to do, ultimately want to do, then building up your experience, especially towards that thing. So in the beginning, that might be hard because you have no experience. So you might need to get broader experience. But as you progress, you want to get more and more closer to that. And then also network. Network is part of the strategy. Those are the big ones. And of course, your education. Yeah. And then job application. I actually think, so most of my students struggle with, they don't get interviews. They apply for jobs and they don't get interviews. And what I've found is most people don't write strong job applications. I think that they write just very basic, regular job applications. And a lot of the information out there about job applications is not for wildlife jobs. So people look at that stuff for businesses or just like the general like LinkedIn stuff where you got to do like bullet points of a couple of words. No, that doesn't work for our field. For a lot of my students, once they improve their job applications and nothing else, then they get jobs.
I find the same thing. I find the biggest thing, the first step for us is clarity.
Yeah.
You can't just go and I want to protect the ocean, or I want to
Yeah,
go into
exactly.
conservation, or I want to go into sharks. Like, you have to have clarity and then identifying the job that you want. I'm very much the same way in your thought process. It's like, figure out what you want to do and then figure out how to get to that point and what you need, what kind of experience you need. That'll help you start to target the jobs that you want.
Yeah.
And then the application is the biggest thing. It's unreal to see some of the application. Is not the people's fault. It's not the fault of students or
Right.
early career scientists. It's just they haven't been taught, and they've been
Exactly.
taught from somebody who's done business resumes before. And like you said,
Right.
they're very different. Like when I did government jobs and I applied to government jobs, like my cover letter, if I look at it, sometimes they were like 8 to 9 pages long, because
Oh
you
my
had
gosh,
to
wow.
answer, for the federal government, for the federal Canadian government, you had to answer all these questions. And if you actually printed it out, it was like 9 pages long, 8 to 9 pages long.
Wow.
With all the, because then you had to hit certain things that they wanted to hear,
Yeah.
and they wouldn't even look at it if it didn't. But it's interesting because it took me a while to find the jobs that I wanted. But when somebody actually sat down, and I used to get frustrated, I stopped applying to government jobs. I got so frustrated with it. I was like, they never answer me back. So what's the point? And then I was actually working a contract in a government building for the government that I wanted, like for the department that I wanted to work for, or one that was like adjacent. And somebody sat me down and said, oh, if you want to do this, there's a certain way. Like, you have to know the specific way. I'm like, why don't they teach us? And they do, but they teach it in-house. They don't teach it outside.
Yeah.
And so this is where like people like yourself come in, where it's like, you have to know where to apply, how to apply, and how to like take the skills and experience that you have and put it on paper in a way that people are gonna be like, this is how I want to see this kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think that's really important.
Yeah. And I think people don't know how to, for lack of a better word, brag about themselves. Like, they're very humble. They'll say, oh, educated guests. And can you provide some more details about that? Like, or
Yeah.
data analysis.
Yeah.
They just don't know how to speak. Yeah, job applications like talk. And then to go off of that, I don't feel like they know the value that they have too. It's like, I remember working with this one student. She had 4 bullet points on her list, and she lived in Borneo for a year and a half studying orangutans. And I was like, there's no way you did just 4 things. Like, you were in the field, like living at a field station. At the very least, you were like doing like field camp type stuff where you're like ordering supplies, doing logistics with a million mosquitoes around you or something. There's more complicated things to this than you're not painting the picture well enough.
It's funny, we laugh at that too, but it's so true. You don't realize how many important things that people look for.
Yeah.
It's like, you can do field work. Everybody can do field work, but how well do you do field work? How well do you prepare for field work? How well do you make sure that like the data is intact and like you've got the right field sheets? And if not field sheets, it's cover. I'm from a water background, so everything has to be covered. Or if it's digital, it's got to make sure it's waterproof and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot that goes in it, and that it's you have to learn how to do it. A lot of people just don't know. And some people get a little resistant when they're like, I should know this, or my university should have taught me. Do you ever get students that are like looking for your help, but may not want to like join a group, or may not want to pay for that kind of service because they feel
definitely.
like and how do you deal with that? I'm curious.
I give away a lot of free stuff. Like, I have my podcast, I have free trainings. I just did a free training that used to be a webinar plus a bonus webinar, and I turned it into 3 free training. It probably ends up being like more than 3 hours long. It's impossible for some stuff to train without them enrolling in something. And just like, I do have resume revamp, which they could take and they could learn and totally redo their resume by themselves. Or even I have a job application academy, but that part does include job application reviews.
So you do them.
So some students might be able to take themselves to the next level on their own, and they don't need any review. But I would say most need the personal review and need how to break down the job posting, because it's not just about you. It's really about dissecting the job posting. And I've become very good at that, like interpreting, oh, this is what they want. This is what they think is most important. And then matching your stuff to that stuff. But I think the biggest thing is that there's a shift that happens when you invest in yourself. You take it much more seriously. So it actually honestly is a benefit to them because they value it so much more. And like, going back to that coaching program I was a part of, it was expensive. And I made sure I showed up every single week because I did not want to waste my money. So I was there. She changed the program around too. So towards the end, it was just me and one other person who were in the program. And I would be at the meetings every single week. And she'd be like, okay, what do you like, just to troubleshoot problems? She's, what are your problems this week? And I'm like, I don't really have any problems. I'm just here to absorb more information and get inspired. And then I would talk to her and I realized I did have more problems that we could talk about. So you show up differently and you take it more seriously. You put in the work. I've done scholarships for my program and some people do take it really seriously. Like I've had Chitra, I gave her a scholarship in Nepal and she is actually now in Illinois. It's amazing. Her dream was to get a master's in the United States.
Yep.
And she did it. She took my program. We worked on her cover letters and everything. But she also put in the work ahead of time too. I do have people fill out applications, but she started in Nepal, like attending she loved turtles. She attended a free, I think, turtle webinar or her conservation talk. And afterwards, she contacted the scientist and she's like, how can I help? I want to get involved. So she had that drive. Like she wasn't letting anything about her situation hold her back.
Yeah.
And yeah, she didn't have the money being with her circumstances. She filled out a good a good application for the scholarship and she showed up to the calls and she took my advice. Whereas other people before I did the application and stuff, I would gift it to people and do scholarships. And some people would never show up at all. And I had to be like, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
But they would tell me they really wanted it and stuff. So there is a certain click change that happens when you invest in yourself. Hey there, I'm just going to interrupt real quickly. And I just wanted to let you know that if you're interested in working more closely with me, I have so many opportunities for you. And I recently updated my programs page. So just head over to fancyscientist.com/work -me, and that will take you to my programs page. I have so many different options, including the Successful Wildlife Professional, which is my everything you could possibly want program. It's 17 weeks of group mentoring. I have one-on-one mentoring. In addition, you actually get the Successful Wildlife Professional with it, but you can also do private one-on-one sessions with me. And then I have things that you can do on your own. I have tons of master classes like Resume Revamp, LinkedIn for Wildlife Careers, Networking for Introverts. So just head over to my programs page. The link will be in the show notes or in the YouTube description.
Yeah, I've done a couple of coaching programs before, and every time, if I did a free one, I wouldn't be as invested. If I had to pay, you're like, I just put down a boatload of money. I need to actually make sure I get the most out of this as possible so that I can get back. In fact, sometimes I look at it and I'm like, how much more money can I make if I'm putting, sometimes it's $100, sometimes it's $500, sometimes it's $1,000. And you're like, how much money am I going to make off of this? That's how I look at it and say, okay, this is what I got to shoot for. So I got to make sure I get this.
Yeah. Yeah. I just joined a program for fitness or for weight loss. And since I've been moved to the Chicago area, I slowly gained like 12 pounds. And I have been trying to
deep dish pizza. That's what it is. That's the problem.
No, I don't eat that.
I know.
I blame my boyfriend. I'm like, I'm too happy being with you. So I gained this weight and I've been trying, like really consciously trying to lose it. And I know how to lose weight. I've done it before. What's always worked for me is personal trainers, but like I've calorie counted by myself and all this stuff. But it hasn't been working. So I'm like, okay, I'm fed up of figuring this out myself. Right. So I joined a program. And then it's also nice because it's kind of like the responsibility is taken off of you. Like I still put in the work, but it's okay, you tell me what to do. And if it doesn't work, it's your fault. They tell me what to do. But because I invested money and then also I have someone to report to.
It's that accountability, right?
Yeah. So I found out I was counting calories, but I was using heaping scoops. And
it makes a difference. It makes a difference.
Oh my gosh. Now I have to weigh stuff. It's like you can't cheat with that.
Oh, no.
But yeah, it works. Like I've lost the 12 pounds. I can't believe it. It's been amazing. And so yeah. And I remember like the first few days, I'm like, crap, I can't lie to myself because they're gonna be like, what's going on, Stephanie? How come you're not losing weight? And I can't be like, oh, your program's not working because
Yeah.
I'm the one who's not doing it. But yeah, it's that accountability. And then also taking the weight off of your shoulders so you don't have to do it alone anymore. You get to talk in my group mentoring program, you get to talk to me. Right now, it's small enough that I'm able to answer every question. So even though it's group mentoring, we do training. So there's recordings that people watch, and then we have group mentoring for whatever questions people have, or if they want me to review things. But it's small enough that I'm able to get to every question. I get to know the people, and it's been great. I've loved working with them. And then also just like, and I don't know how it's been for you, but I've felt like it's very common. There's definitely exceptions to the rule, but it's very common in the science world for people to be negative and hard on you. And honestly, sometimes abusive. I've never really been abused, but I know situations where people have been like taken advantage of. You're supposed to work 20-hour days. And just like in academia, like you just never feel good enough and smart enough and stuff like that. I really want to do this to give back because I was never the smartest. I was never the best at science, but I was really dedicated and passionate. And that's how I got through my PhD. Like you don't need to be the smartest at all. It's like about being stubborn. You just want to make
drive.
it happen. Yeah.
Hey, I had a high school teacher who told me that I did not belong in science. And he was my physics teacher. And I said, screw you. I am
good
going
for
to.
you.
Yeah, that's been my driving factor, like in university.
Yeah.
Every time there was a difficult part, I was like, no, I'm going to continue.
Yeah. And some people probably carry that with them the whole life and let them like not be in science. So I like to be that positive force and support for people that I truly believe anyone can do it as long as they want it. And again, you have to be willing to put in the work. You can't just like sign up for my program and you'll get a job. You have to put in the work. But if you're stubborn enough too, that's like there are competitive jobs. If you like ocean jobs, like if you want to be a marine biologist, that's a super competitive job.
Yeah, very.
If you want to work with whales and dolphins and stuff. But I think if you're stubborn enough and you work at it hard long enough with the right strategy and doing things with intention, building your network, it can happen for you or will happen for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So how often do you run these groups? Is it done all throughout the year? Is it like an ongoing group, or do you do it, you open it up for a small group and then you close it and then open it up for another small group?
Good question. I've changed it a lot. I recently decided on one strategy. So I have a couple of different levels. My favorite and the best level is a successful wildlife professional. That is my group mentoring program. So it used to be a year long. Now it's 4 months worth of content. You get to keep it forever though, so you can pace it however you want, but it's technically you watch an hour-long training per week and do exercises. And then we have group mentoring. You can ask whatever you want. I did have open enrollment before, then I switched to cohorts. Now I'm doing kind of both where people have to sign up for the training to get in, and then it's open for a short period of time. And then I run the trainings throughout the year. So right now I'm doing the trainings like every 6 weeks, but it depends on how full the group gets, I think, how often I'll do the trainings. But I would say at least 3 times a year I would have the trainings. Hey there, it's me. I'm interrupting to just further explain about the Becoming a Wildlife Professional free training series. This is 100% free training that I do 3 to 4 times a year. And it is the best free advice that I give. And personally, I think it's the best free advice out there. I've had people actually get positions implementing this free advice. So you don't want to miss it. I'm going to put the link underneath below. We're doing our next training in March of 2026. But if you're watching this at any time, just make sure you sign up and you will get emails for the next training. It goes over all of the mistakes that people are making when it comes to wildlife, conservation, environmental sciences, jobs. If you're in any of those careers, it doesn't have to be a wildlife career. It could be a more adjacent field. The advice still applies. As I mentioned, we go over all of the mistakes, what people are doing that is causing them to spin their wheels, And then I give you the 3 pillars that are proven by my students that they work, they get results, they lead to interviews and jobs, and not just any job, paid jobs. That's what we all want. We want to be paid. So if you are feeling lost, confused, you don't know what to do next, you're worried about the competition, or maybe you're already applying for jobs and you're just not getting anything. You do not have to apply for hundreds and hundreds of jobs. No, do not do that. You're going to learn in this free training how that is actually doing you a disservice. It is wasting your time and energy, and you are not going to get the results that you want. Whether you are a college student who's ready to graduate, or just starting out, maybe you're a high school student even, this training is for you. Maybe you are a career switcher. Maybe you're in your 30s or 40s or later. It does not matter. I have worked with all kinds of people and all over the world. This advice applies all over the world. So make sure you sign up, and I am so excited to see you there live. And then I have the Job Application Academy. So this is for people who know what they want to do. Like they have the clarity, they have the experience, but they're just like struggling on the job applications. And I teach them, it's all the same stuff from the Successful Wildlife Professional, but just the job application stuff. And then we do reviews once a month just on job applications. And then I have like master classes where it's just recordings and you can do it on your own.
Okay. Interesting. That's really interesting. So that's one side. We just got into the one side of your business.
Yeah.
And that looks really great. And we'll put some links in so people can check out some more information on those if they're interested. Also, you do it like a science communication. So this is not the only thing. You do a little bit of science communication. Now, I know you and I have discussed your TV escapades quite a bit, going on TV and doing some stuff for the History Channel. How did that all come about?
I started out on TV first through somebody I knew, my boss at the museum. I think he got on a TV show from somebody he knew too, as well. Rob Nelson. Rob, okay. You'd actually like. You should interview Rob. He does. Oh. He's not exclusive to oceans by any means, but I think he's done some ocean work. But he was a scientist, and then he transitioned to communicator, but he does like film. That's his big thing. Oh. Now he's really successful on YouTube now. He changed a little bit. He still does science communication, but he changed his name to Stone Age Man and does some like
that name.
Yeah, you'd like him. But he makes a lot of videos and stuff. Anyway, so he got us on the Science Channel's show What on Earth. And so then I just did that show for several years, and then independently I got invited to do a show on the History Channel called The Proof Is Out There. And that I got through my YouTube channel because I was just creating content. And at the time I did a lot of camera trap work, and I would visit a lot of places too, giving talks, and people would always tell me that they saw a mountain lion or a black panther. And in North Carolina, we used to have mountain lions, but now they're extinct there. And there are no black panthers in the United States. So I did a video about that. And slowly but surely over time, that blew up. And that's probably my most successful video. And the people from the History Channel, just somebody found my video and they were like, I really like how you explain things. Although a lot of the commenters probably disagree. I didn't like immediately poo-poo them and be like, no, they don't exist. I went through like with the evidence that like, why we haven't found any evidence of them. So now I'm on this TV show where I evaluate stuff. So a lot of times it's like Bigfoot videos or just like weird videos, but there's also a lot of like just weird things happening in nature too that
unexplained.
Not well explained, or just some animals doing weird things. So I comment on those things. And then I've just been doing a couple of extra shows here and there, mostly through that connection, because people from the History, that's on the History Channel. So people got to know me and so they call me in to do some extra shows here and there.
I love it. And like, how often do you spend on that?
Oh, good question. It's usually happens maybe 3 or 4 times a year.
Okay.
And I crunch before the assignment. I hope they're not listening. I think part of the reason why I do that is because the stories and stuff will be really fresh in my head, and the information will be fresh in my head because they give you the videos and stuff to review on, and you talk it over with them, and you talk about like the different angles that we'll take. So for instance, if it's a Bigfoot video, they would They'll be like, okay, like what other animals live in the area could it be? And like, why couldn't it be that? So sometimes there's things I might have to research or look up. Like, okay, there's this one video with a snake. I still don't know how it happened, but it got like this algae growing on it. So it looked like hair. It looked like a hairy green snake, like kind of like a Muppet. And it was a real snake. So talking about like how I know it's a snake. And then some things I might have to look up, like how does algae grow on a snake, or how would things happen? But yeah, so I just study the week and prepare the week before, usually like a couple of hours every day. And then it's a full day of filming.
That's amazing. And like when you're done, when you do a full day of filming like that, you get pretty tired after a while. You're talking all day, you're going through takes and multiple takes. You must be exhausted. So it's probably good that it's only 3 or 4 times a year where you're just like, all right, that's good. I got it out of my system.
Yeah.
Yeah. What have you learned the most from doing TV work with science communication, like traditional TV work?
That's a good question. Maybe that people love Bigfoot. Like fake funny answer, but I think my fake funny answer is that people take cryptids really seriously. I had no idea. I didn't even know cryptid was a word.
Yeah,
there's societies, there's conferences, like they take it very seriously. I think in terms of, this is hard. Maybe obviously like sensational stuff is interesting. Like what I think people are always interested in, like the unknown and like what's left to be discovered and the intriguing. And I think so many people probably like Bigfoot and stories like that too, is because they know somebody who's had an experience. That's another thing, is like making it relatable. But sometimes I guess like also what people don't know and what people find interesting. And this kind of goes back to being a scientist. When I first became a scientist, or even into my science career, I felt like I was a terrible scientist because in school I was so well at studying. Like I would just memorize for a test. I liked it too. I wasn't just like cramming for the test, but I was good at studying. And then as a science is all about figuring out answers to questions that people don't know. So I had to come up with questions, and I just assumed so much stuff was known because that's what I was taught in school. Like, here's all the stuff we know.
Yeah.
So I think just that there's so much stuff out there that we don't know still. Like even they had me do this one video about these worms like forming piles. And it was like after a storm, and like they were like in the middle of the road, and they were talking about like why would they be in the middle? And I don't know, I just assumed like people would know the answer to this, but like people don't. I looked it up and there's these different speculations. And then also that people would find that interesting too. Oh, I guess people are interested in like how the world works and and strange phenomena and stuff like that. And it doesn't have to be fake. I'm sorry, Bigfoot's not real, guys, but it doesn't, there's lots of really cool stuff out there that we don't know that's real.
I think one of the best things that I've ever learned was talk to people who are not involved in science, and maybe not conspiracy theorists like the Bigfoot people, but also take somebody on a hike, or take somebody into a river area or a lake area or an ocean area for me, or even anywhere, and then listen to the questions that they have.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're like the simplest questions, but they are interesting. You'll be like, oh, actually, that was a really good question. And I think oftentimes as biologists, we often overthink, and we're like, what can we give that's super exciting and that'll go over the top, like for TV or something like that.
Yes.
I did a TV show as well, and it was about evolution, and some of the little things, like just the function, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. People really want to know about that. Okay, I can do that. And I think when you hear people, or even kids, ask questions, because then you're just like, okay, this is like the top of the curiosity chain, is when you get to talk to kids. And as when you worked with kids and continue, and you're like, okay, now these are questions that people really want to know. It's almost like you have that TV show Smarter Than a Fifth Grader. It's almost like you ask a question like a fifth grader, because that would be something I think that would be really interesting to hear. Can you answer a question from a fifth grader or something like that? Because they always have great questions, I find, young kids. But that's interesting. And now, so growing the business, like in terms of science communication, the TV's one aspect. Do you ever get to work with organizations on their science communication? Have they ever reached out? Because you do podcasting, you do videos, you do TV. Do you ever provide advice for some like organizations or other science communicators themselves?
I have, like during my postdoc, I would be part of like panels and things like that. But since then, not really. I've just more focused on my own business. And honestly, I've been focusing on getting the career mentoring thing. So that might be part of the reason why, is I've been really focusing on getting the career mentoring, because I've had to learn so much with, and not only creating the programs, but also like wondering which structure of the programs works well. Obviously creating the content and then selling. I never thought I would be selling. And
True.
science communication is actually selling too. It's the
Yep.
same principle. So I've had to learn so much with that stuff. And now I finally feel like I'm not finished with it, but at a good place where I can take a back seat. And then next year, I really want to focus on science communication again. And also, I did do this kids program, and I want to revisit that and do that again, but change it. I started out initially more like a teaching kids about like the process of science and stuff. And then was it last year? Yeah, last year I worked with a coach, and he helped me transform it into like a parenting course where because he felt that like nature and science wouldn't sell on its own. He felt parents aren't really looking to get their kids involved in science. That's not like a strong need. But parents like fear losing connection with their kids. So we framed it as to create the best connection and long lasting connection with your child, like work with them outside on these collaborative projects in nature, which I totally agree with and believe in. But I felt like it took a parenting twist, and I want to put it back more to be just about getting kids outside in nature and getting them connected and getting them curious. So less of a focus on parenting. So I want to be doing more of that again next year, and figuring out how I want to run that. And
love it.
If your audience members have ideas for what kinds of things they'd want to see, but I don't know, I'm thinking about some sort of membership where like I provide an activity for them to do outside, and we have a community where they can share and contribute to community science or something like that.
Yeah. Be a part of something bigger maybe, or be a part of a project, like an ongoing project that multiple people can contribute to. I like that. I like that idea. That's cool. I think the more you can do with young children, the better, so they can get that hands-on experience, especially with parents and stuff. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Now we're coming to the end here, and you and I can talk forever. I know. We do that all the time. We didn't even get into the podcast. So Fancy Scientist is the podcast that you have now. It's on YouTube as well, but it's on any favorite podcast app that people can get, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And what can people get from the podcast? Like, what would they expect to hear from the podcast?
So it all centers around the idea of really wildlife. So that's what I've always felt like I've been about, like my connection to animals and connection to nature. So I talk about my experiences as a researcher. I talk about careers. That's something I've been talking about a lot, careers. I interview guests. So I interview guests with all different types of careers, all different types of backgrounds, basically related to our field. So some people, like I've talked to people who have worked in the climate change sector of corporations, or anything related to lifestyle as well that relates even indirectly to wildlife. So I'm also like super interested in health and just even being like a more conscious consumer and stuff like that, or diet as well, like how your diet impacts wildlife. So there's a huge variety of things. I'm also really big on mindset as well. So sometimes I have episodes about mindset because, as I mentioned before, this career and the people can be negative, and then also just the nature of what we're dealing with loss. It can get depressing. Absolutely. So, and then I don't know, I'm just really interested in like productivity and efficiency and things like that. So just like making yourself a better biologist or like whatever career trajectory you're going towards. So it's a mishmash of things, but it centers around wildlife and the environment.
This is what I love about podcasting, is everybody the host makes it what it is. And it's based on your interests, and it feeds it and what you think is needed within the field. And I think that's really important. And I know a lot of your audience connects on that too.
Like whatever I want to talk about.
That's the thing. It's the same with mine. It's whatever I want to talk about. But we get to talk about it. That's the fun part. Now, one question, like what would you like, as from the experience that you have from building a business and being in the wildlife career itself, what advice would you give like my listeners here, if not only are they listening to start a career, but maybe talking about doing a little bit of a job or working as like in making like building their own business,
like a side hustle?
Yeah. What would the recommendation be, or the best thing you can give if you had to give one piece of advice? What would you do? What would you say?
Oh my God, one piece of advice. Well, first, let me say that even before I became an entrepreneur, when I was a scientist, I was like, oh my gosh, my job is so much like being a business owner, like my dad's, because when you're a scientist, especially like I was never a principal investigator, but being a postdoc, it felt like that because I was at times like writing my own grants and trying to fund my own projects. But I got to see the people I was working with, and they were the principal investigators. And like their science is like a business. Like they have to fund their projects, hire employees, which are either graduate students or field assistants to run those projects. And then the output, like the profit, is the publication.
Yeah.
So it's just like a different elements, but the same type of system. And that's what my dad would do. He'd get customers and to make money. And so it was very similar. And also like you're probably laughing when I was talking about my dad, because I never went home and felt like I was off. I could always be like, at the time I was applying for jobs, but I could always be writing more papers, doing more data analysis, like coming up with this new idea, setting up this project. There was always so many things to do.
Yeah.
But I think I'm going to give two parts. I'm going to cheat and give two answers. But the biggest part, I think, is first to know that it is really possible for you in this day and age. Like, it is so cool what people sell online. So I think my biggest piece of advice is to follow people who are doing what you want. Follow digital entrepreneurs who are doing this type of stuff. And there's so many free podcasts out there, so many free resources to help you. One of the people I follow is James Wedmore. He's the biggest one I follow. And that there's so much opportunity out there. He had somebody on his podcast who taught people how to hike. And he was like joking. He's okay, like, how are you making money of this? You're just telling people like put one foot in front of the other, and he's being a jerk. But I mean, on purpose to be silly. But this woman, she started a business teaching people how to hike. People wanted to do backpack hiking. They didn't know how to do it. So she made a course. Here's how you do it. And here's how to be safe. Here are the things you need to think about. And she made money doing it. So just start out, and like James will teach you way better than I will, but he has so many free resources. Just start out thinking about you don't even have to be like a full-blown expert, but what do you know more about than somebody else?
Than most people,
that you could start teaching them. And it's as simple as I started mine with a post saying, I'm thinking about starting a course teaching you how to get a career in wildlife. Like, if you're interested, drop an emoji and I'll send you like the link with more information. And it's as simple as that. And if you don't want to charge people in the beginning, if you just want to help people to get some ideas, you can do that. You can charge them. You don't have to charge them a lot. You can charge them $50 or something, and just get that experience of working with people. And you just don't know, again, like what you can sell. Like, people are just looking for help. And you can probably go online and learn how to hike, but you have to sort through all the noise and everything, when it's so much nicer to just sign up for a program and watch trainings and know that you know how to do it. And then if you have a group mentoring program, you can ask this person questions. So if you love birds, if you love fish, if you love plants, can you teach a plant identification course or a bird, bird people are crazy in a good way. Can you teach an audio course? Like, here's how to learn bird songs. I'll teach you the top 10 bird songs. And again, they can do it online, but if you can teach them in a way that makes it faster and easier for them, then you have some people.
Even like an audio catalog, like you bring it as a podcast, or you can put it as a list or something like that and hear the birds. It's a really good idea.
I mean, 10% royalties of whoever does that.
But this has been great, Stephanie. This has been awesome. You and I were good friends, and we've become great friends over like talking about podcasting. So I'm going to put links to your website, to the podcast and everything, so people can get access to the YouTube channel, so people can get more access to you and connect with you. And just I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
It's been fun.
It's been so much fun to have you on. We'll definitely have you back on sooner than later to talk more about science communication and everything. But I really appreciate you coming on, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie, for joining us here on the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. It was great to have you on. You know what's funny is before we did the interview, I was like, hey, when was the last time you were on? She was like, I don't think I've ever been on. And I was like, yes, right. And she goes, when was the last time you were on my podcast? I'm like, I think I did it. But she's like, no, I don't think you did. And we haven't gone on each other's podcast and been able to speak about what we do, but we are doing that now. So you can check out the Fancy Scientist podcast with me on it soon. We're still about to record that next week, but it's going to be a lot of fun. And you should check that podcast out. But also just like what great information that she let us have here on this episode. Like, it was great. It's been a while since we've talked podcasting, and not only podcasting, but conservation careers. And a lot of times it's me talking about it. It's great to see somebody else having a very similar position, but also a little bit different in their approach. And I really like the approach she takes. I think it's really great. So if you want to take one of her courses, please feel free to do. You can go over to her website, which the link is in the show notes below. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, it's in the description. And you can just click on that and go over there and find out more about Stephanie. But that's it for today's episode. I want to thank you all for joining me today with Stephanie. I want to thank Stephanie for joining us and taking time out of her busy time building her business and being able to share those great knowledge bombs with us today. So thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.
This was such a fun interview. Thank you, Andrew, so much again for interviewing. Make sure you check out his podcast, especially if you are interested in marine fields. It is How to Protect the Ocean. I also recommend you connect with him on LinkedIn. He's such a great guy, Andrew Lewin. All of the links will be in the show notes for you to find this information. If you have any questions for me, if you want me to expand on any of the different topics that we talked about, just comment below. You can do this on YouTube or Spotify, but I have social media everywhere. So just feel free to reach out to me and connect with me. I love hearing from you guys. If you enjoyed learning about my research background, then I highly recommend you check out my series all about my research working with forest elephants. I believe it's honestly 3, maybe 4 podcast episodes. I'm going to put the links in the show notes. If you're on YouTube, you're going to see the video popping up next. But this gives you a really detailed explanation about my thinking in choosing my research path and how I moved forward with each step. Have an amazing day. Be kind to animals, be kind to each other, and I'll see you in the next episode.